Welcome to Current Conversations, where we dive into inspiring stories and insights from those who are creating meaningful change in conservation and beyond. I'm Bailey Smith, and this is Clif Briley. We're both from Rivers Are Life. And on this episode, we're talking to Isabel Willems, a student at LSU who's about to head out on her third volunteer trip with Global Water Brigades. So Isabel, thanks so much for joining us today. If you could start off and tell us a little bit about yourself and about your relationship with Global Water Brigades, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm currently a senior at Louisiana State University. I'm majoring in communication studies with minors in Spanish and criminology. I've been a part of the LSU chapter of Global Water Brigades since 2023, I think it was. And Global Water Brigades is an offshoot of Global Brigades, which is the parent organization focuses on a few different areas of community development in rural areas throughout the world. I've been to Panama twice and I'm going to Honduras this year, and I have really enjoyed working with Global Water Brigades because of their consistency in working with these communities in collaborative efforts with the communities that they serve. And I really have enjoyed the work they've done so far and that I've gotten to be a part of.
I hear you went to Panama spring break of last year with LSU. Can you walk us through what was that week like and what projects were you working on with the Global Water Brigades during that trip?
Yeah, absolutely. We were in a community called Sinaí, which is in the Darien region of Panama. So it's like in the south of Panama. We were near the eastern coast. It's a community of about 400 people, mainly made up of members of the Embera-Wunan indigenous group. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And while we were there for about a week, and we worked with local Panamanian engineers in the planning and construction of a clean water system in Sinaí. We were able to use some pre-existing infrastructure within the community, but it was a lot of surveying land, digging ditches for pipes, that sort of thing, meeting with community members. So it was a really fun week.
I'm so impressed by your pronunciation of some of these terms. When I was reading some of the notes, I was looking at the name of the river that you were at in Panama and thinking that I have no idea. So can you tell us how to pronounce the name of the river that you were visiting in Panama?
Yeah, so Sinaí is on the Membrillo River. So Membrillo.
It looked a lot more complicated when I was reading it. The Membrillo River. Well, this is such a great example of how we can really make the most of our networks, especially if we're all working together to accomplish a common goal. I've gone on a few similar service style trips like this, and I'm always amazed at the team camaraderie that's built both between like the visiting community and the local community that's there. So I'm really curious to hear from you, as you worked with the local village along this river in Panama. How did you and the other students team up with local community members to kind of tackle this challenge?
We worked very closely with the community members. As you mentioned, that was a huge part of it, was that kind of interconnectedness. They worked alongside us through every single step of the process, surveying, digging, figuring out how to put this system together, giving us information about the community, obviously, that we as outsiders didn't have. And we were very eager to learn about their way of life and how we could best help them. And they were more than eager to teach. So it was a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a Rivers Are Life film in our catalog called Under the African Sun, which addresses water access for communities along the Zambezi River in Zimbabwe and Zambia. In situations like this where you're helping out the community, trust, has got to be a huge factor. The community has to trust you that you're in it for the right reasons and there to help. I'm curious, how did you go about gaining that trust with the community members there? And are there any memorable stories from your time working with the community?
I think a huge part of it was just simply connecting with them however we could. And the way that we primarily did that was through daily meetings. We met with a lot of different members of the community and talked through the project so they understood every single step of what we were doing, why we were doing it. We were teaching them as well how to maintain and repair the water system once we had left. So it wasn't like we were just showing up, throwing something at them and then leaving. We wanted them to have the tools and resources and knowledge that would be necessary for them to continue successfully using the system past when we had left. And we also just just chatted with them. I mean, obviously there were some language barriers. Not all of us spoke Spanish, and many of the community members actually only spoke. There were a couple different indigenous languages. So like with my broken Spanish, I even couldn't connect with some people. But any effort at all to communicate and talk with them was greatly appreciated. And there was one day where we all played a game of basketball because that was very popular in their community. And so we had kind of reached a lull in the workday, and they took us to the basketball court, and I'm horribly uncoordinated and the opposite of sporty. So I sat that one out, but it was really fun, like cheering on from the sidelines. I'm cheering in English. The people beside me are cheering in Spanish and indigenous languages. And of course the players, you know, you don't have to speak the same language. They both know the rules of the game. So just really being willing to connect on both that kind of personal level and on the level of like, we're here to do this job. Let's collaborate, you know.
With the daily meetings that you had with the community members, what did those meetings look like? And did it help you gain a better understanding of the community's water needs and, you know, the cultural context behind what you were doing down there as well?
So we met with a few different groups in the community to really understand why they needed us there, what we could do for them. And I feel like it was the most important part, second only to the installation of the water system of our brigade. We met with some local school teachers and the principal of the school to talk about the needs that the children had, because the community was actually about half children, half minors when we were there. And we also had a couple of meetings with a lot of women from the community, because Global Water Brigades had pretty accurately identified that the women of the community would be the ones using the water system the most, as it's kind of traditionally their role is to clean and care for children and cook and those sorts of things. And so meeting with them, hearing their concerns, even when the conversation, you know, the language barrier made it difficult at times, everybody was making such an earnest effort to connect and taking this very seriously, because it's a matter of public health and concern and something that these people have been fighting to get for years. And so that absolutely was crucial and key in understanding their culture and the context in which we were installing this system. So it wasn't a simple clinical engineering project. It was very much an interpersonal human effort.
That's so cool and so incredibly important in those kinds of service projects, that you really understand the heart of the cause, right? I'm curious to hear, what did you find most either interesting or surprising, both about the cultural needs of the water system and maybe just about the water system itself and how they were managing it before you came in?
Yeah, so like I said, there was some existing infrastructure for a water system, and that was largely because there had been two efforts prior to our arrival and prior to Global Water Brigade's involvement to install a clean water system in Sinai. Unfortunately, both of those efforts had ultimately failed because the organizations that had attempted to install them had not made that community connection, and actually had not taught the people of Sinai how to maintain or repair the water systems. And so the second that something went wrong, there was just unfortunately nothing they could do. And so every single day prior to our installation of our water system, there was one man who had taken it upon himself to haul all of this piping and these generators down to the river, manually pump water into a couple of small storage tanks. Then he would go through the process of cleaning and sanitizing the water. And then that was the water that the community had for the day. And so another really important part of us connecting with the community and understanding their water needs was we actually walked through that process with him to see the work that he had to put in to just providing what to us would be like a very small amount of water. This was not water that they were using for showering or cleaning or cooking. It was purely drinking water. And it took him hours every single day. And so that was just kind of shocking to me. Just the absolute persistence that the community showed that really proved how crucial this water system was for them.
That's incredible. Yeah. And you can see that immediate need and the fruits of your labor, so to speak, and just kind of immediately turning that on for this community, just the lengths that they were going to get drinking water. It's unfathomable for a lot of us. It sounds to me like this project was equal parts, in a way, engineering and sociology as well, which it must have been really cool to apply what you're studying at LSU in such a hands-on way. What lessons do you think you took away from this experience? And I'm really interested to hear what the reaction and response was from the community at the conclusion of the project.
So there were obviously some personal benefits from this project. I got to practice Spanish. I'm a Spanish minor. And I got to learn more about this amazing culture and visit a new country. But on a kind of broader scale, and this was especially apparent through the discussions I had with other members of the brigade, was we were just very keenly reminded of the importance of what we were learning academically and how it could apply to the real world. Obviously, I'm not an engineering student, but there were several engineering students on the brigade, and they were getting to apply these things that they had learned in a classroom setting or had to do on their homework to an actual water system that was going to directly benefit and impact the lives of hundreds of people. And I think that really kind of cemented their desire to go out and cause positive changes in their communities. And it was also a reminder of the just critical importance of access to clean water, access to running water. And it's a position I think a lot of people, especially here in America, in places with pretty consistent running water, kind of take for granted is the bodies of water that exist in our natural landscapes and that pretty much every human society has sprung up around, has kind of been born from. And as for the community themselves, of course, they got access to running water, to clean water, which they were having health problems related to the pollution in the water and the bacteria in the water. So that's going to be huge in helping them. But there was also one man said something that really stuck with me along the lines of, like, it's really heartwarming that there are these students from America, from a state they'd never heard of, who care about this small rural community, who they don't speak our language, they're learning about our culture, and still they care. And so I think they were obviously very grateful because we were there to help. And I think it was a good reminder for everybody about just how interconnected we can be despite these huge geographical differences, cultural differences, language barriers, and our ultimate kind of shared humanity.
Yeah, it really kind of underscores that idea of like many hands make light work, right? And that we bring a different level of experience and expertise from different parts of the world, and we can all kind of lean on each other. And when we do that, I think it provides such a transformative experience for everybody involved. I know I've been involved in projects that are similar to that, where I just come home feeling like so on fire for that project and for service trips and for helping people around the world. And I'm assuming you can really relate to that because I know you're getting ready to go on another trip with the Global Water Brigades, right? So what can you tell us about your upcoming trip?
I'm really excited. We're going to Honduras for the first time. Like I said, our past couple of trips have been to Panama. So this is a new country. Global Water Brigades is kind of freshly established in Honduras. So from my understanding, the majority of what we'll be doing is working with local professionals and community members to test water sources to see what kind of the issues in those water sources are. We'll also be educating some locals on water safety, water cleanliness, that sort of thing, the necessity of clean water systems. And then we'll be drawing up some plans, making some plans for future water systems, maybe even starting construction. It's a little bit up in the air right now until we kind of hit the ground and can get going, but that's the current plan.
Well, we're excited to hear all about it while you're there and when you get back.
Before we sign off, Isabelle, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know about you or Global Water Brigades? It's such a cool thing that you're doing and a great organization.
Yeah, well, Global Water Brigades is, as I mentioned, an offshoot of Global Brigades' larger organization, and they've got various community development efforts. It's not just engineering focused or water based. So there really, I feel like, is a niche for anybody who's interested in helping out around the world. And then also on a little bit of a personal note, I really encourage anybody listening or watching to get involved with what interests you, even if it doesn't immediately connect to what you're currently working in, studying, involved with. As I've mentioned a couple of times, like, I'm not an engineering student. I'm not studying the environment or water, but I was interested in those topics. And that, I mean, I can't imagine a life now where I hadn't gotten involved with these efforts. And so really just kind of following your passion and following the things that interest you can make a world of difference.
That's great. Yeah, follow your passions and your interests and lean into the human connection is what I'm really getting out of your experience living vicariously through you. So it's really a beautiful story.
So, Izzy, you mentioned in like encouraging people to get involved. If anybody wanted to get involved in Global Brigades or specifically Global Water Brigades, how can someone go about doing that?
Yeah, so if you're a student currently of higher education, you can go on their website, water.globalbrigades.org, or just globalbrigades.org if you're interested in learning about the other initiatives that they do as well. And on there, there's a way to search for brigades near you. So, for example, people don't necessarily have to be a student at LSU to join the LSU Brigade. They just have to be local students. So if they went to the community college here in Baton Rouge, they could potentially join us. So even if you're a student and your school doesn't have a chapter, perhaps a school near you does. And you can always start your own chapter. They've got all the resources on there to do that as well. And anybody, regardless of whether or not you're a student, can donate. And you can find the link for that at the website as well.
That's great, Isabel. Yeah, great ways that we can all get involved. Thanks again for being with us today. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach new listeners and grow our community. Thanks for your support. And if you have a topic or guest you would be interested in hearing on current conversations, let us know that as well.